You are mine, I am yours. A cowboy forbidden love with the woman who saved him. Ethan Cole was a man who had always been alone. Born and raised on the wide plains of the West, he learned early how to rely only on himself. His father had died when he was just a boy, and his mother had passed away soon after, leaving him with nothing but a small ranch and a stubborn determination to survive. Over the years, he became known as a hard-working, strong cowboy, someone who could ride through the fiercest storms, mend fences, and handle any kind of trouble that came his way. But Ethan had a secret. He never let anyone get close to him. He trusted no one. Friendship was rare. Love was impossible. One late summer afternoon, Ethan set out to check on his cattle in the far fields. The sky had been clear that morning, but as he rode, he noticed dark clouds gathering in the distance. The wind picked up, whistling through the dry grass and bending the trees. Something about the sky made Ethan uneasy. He shook it off. Storms came and went every year. He had faced worse. Hours passed, and the clouds grew heavier. A sudden downpour began, soaking him and the horses to the bone. The rain was cold, cutting through his coat and chilling him to the bone. Break. Lightning split the sky, and the rumble of thunder shook the ground beneath his feet. Ethan knew he had to hurry back, but the path was slippery, the mud thick, and the horses struggling to keep their footing. Then, as if the storm had decided to test him, one of his horses lost its footing on a steep hill. Ethan tried to steady it, but the ground gave way beneath him. He fell hard, hitting his side against a jagged rock. Pain shot through him, sharp and unrelenting. Breath, he could barely move. Hours seemed to stretch into an endless nightmare. The rain continued without mercy, and Ethan's strength began to fade. His body ached in ways he had never known, and the cold made his thoughts sluggish. He tried calling for help, shouting through the storm, but there was no one around to hear him. The nearest town was miles away, and no one would know where he was. He was completely alone. Just when his hope began to slip away, a figure appeared through the heavy rain. At first, he thought he was imagining things, that his mind was playing tricks on him, but the figure drew closer, steady and determined, and Ethan realized it was a woman. She was tall and strong, moving through the storm with purpose. Her clothes were soaked, sticking to her like second skin, but she did not hesitate. She reached him, kneeling beside his fallen form. "Hold on," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I've got you." Ethan tried to speak, but his throat was dry, his lips cracked and bleeding, but he shook his head weakly. He had never asked for help before, and pride made it difficult even now. But the pain was too great, and the cold too deep. He had no choice. The woman whose name he would soon learn was Clara Hayes lifted him gently, checking him over for broken bones or worse injuries. Her hands were skilled, careful, and surprisingly strong. She spoke to him as she worked, her voice soft and steady, giving him instructions he barely understood. Slowly, with immense effort, she helped him onto a horse she had brought. He could barely sit upright, leaning heavily against her. She led the horse through the storm, refusing to let him fall again. For hours they moved through mud, puddles, and rain-soaked plains. Ethan was too weak to talk, too proud to thank her properly, and too in pain to hide the gratitude he felt. All he could do was trust her, something he had never done with anyone in his life. He watched her face in the lightning flashes. There was determination there, yes, but also a kindness he had never known. He wondered silently what kind of person would risk everything for a stranger. Eventually they reached her cabin, small and humble, tucked away at the edge of the woods. She guided him inside, stripped off his wet clothes, and laid him on a warm bed she had prepared. The room smelled faintly of herbs and wood smoke, and for the first time that day, Ethan felt warmth. Not just from the fire, but from the presence of someone who cared. Clara tended to his wounds carefully, cleaning cuts and bruises, binding them neatly, and offering him warm water. "Rest," she said firmly. "You're lucky I found you when I did. Another hour and you might not have made it." Ethan wanted to argue, to tell her he could have managed on his own, but the truth was undeniable. He would not have survived this storm without her. Pride battled gratitude in his chest, and he found himself strangely uncomfortable with this helplessness. No one had ever cared for him like this. He was not used to being looked after. Days passed, and Ethan began to recover. Clara stayed nearby, checking on him constantly. She brought him meals, ensured he had enough water, and kept the fire burning. The cabin, small and simple, became a place of safety and rest he had never known. Over time, he began to talk to her, sharing small details about his life, about the ranch, about the loneliness that had followed him for so many years. Clara listened without judgment, nodding, asking gentle questions, and never pushing him to speak more than he wished. Ethan realized something he had never admitted to himself before. He felt a connection to Clara. It was strange and unfamiliar, a warmth in his chest he could not explain. He had spent his life avoiding attachments, avoiding vulnerability. Yet here was a woman who had seen him at his weakest and still cared. She had saved his life, but she had also awakened something in him, a longing for companionship he had buried long ago. Clara, too, felt the stirrings of something powerful. She had seen many people in need, but few had touched her heart the way Ethan did. There was a quiet strength in him, a determination and resilience that inspired her. And though he was guarded, even cold at times, she sensed a deep goodness beneath the surface. Saving him had been instinct, yes, but staying with him, watching over him, and feeling a growing attachment, it was something she had not expected. As the days turned into a week, Ethan's recovery progressed. He could walk a little, though he still needed her support. They spent quiet evenings by the fire, talking about small things: weather, cattle, life on the plains. Each conversation chipped away at the walls Ethan had built around himself. He laughed softly at her stories, and she smiled at his rare moments of humor. The cabin became more than just a shelter. It became a place where two people began to understand each other in ways neither had anticipated. One evening, as the sun set in fiery reds and oranges over the plains, Ethan found himself looking at Clara in a way he had never looked at anyone before. She was sitting by the fire, brushing her hair back from her face, her eyes bright in the glow of the flames. For a moment, he felt a surge of something he could not name: gratitude, admiration, longing, all wrapped into one. Clara noticed him watching and smiled, though there was a hint of worry in her eyes. You'll heal," she said softly. You'll be back on your feet soon." Ethan nodded, but he could not look away. "I don't know why. I feel like I owe you more than I can ever repay."
Clara shook her head. "You don't owe me anything."
"I did what anyone should do. I helped because it was the right thing." Her words should have reassured him, but instead, they made his chest tighten.
He was not used to people doing things purely out of kindness.
The concept was foreign, and yet it stirred something deep inside him. The storm had passed, but its effect lingered. Ethan knew his life had changed in ways he did not yet understand. Clara had entered his world like a quiet force, saving him physically, but also beginning to touch his heart. For the first time in his life, he felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he did not have to face the world alone. Little did he know, this rescue was only the beginning. The bond they had started to form would be tested by rules, expectations, and dangers neither of them could foresee. But for now, in that small cabin on the edge of the plains, two people had found something rare: trust, care, and the beginning of a connection that would shape the rest of their lives. Ethan still struggled with his pride. He still wanted to push her away, to return to his solitary ways, but he could not deny the truth he felt deep in his chest. Clara had saved him, and in doing so, had become a part of him, whether he liked it or not. And Clara, despite her own fears and uncertainties, could not ignore the growing attachment she felt for this quiet, strong cowboy who had once been a stranger, but who now mattered more than she had expected. And so, their story began not with words of love, not with promises, but with trust earned in the midst of a storm, with care offered when it was needed most, and with the unspoken understanding that sometimes the most unexpected meetings could change lives. After weeks of rest and care, Ethan Cole slowly regained his strength. His body had healed from the worst of the storm and the fall, but his mind remained restless. He was a man used to independence, used to standing alone against every challenge the plains could throw at him. One night, as they sat by the fire, the wind whispering outside the cabin, Ethan finally spoke the truth he had been holding back. "Clara, Bration, I don't know what the future holds," he said quietly, "but I know I don't want to face it without you." Clara's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, that she had been struggling with her own feelings, but the fear of the world outside held her back. Instead, she reached out and took his hand in hers. "Ethan, whatever comes, we face it together," she said softly. For a brief moment, the world outside the cabin seemed to disappear. There was only the warmth of the fire, the sound of the wind, and the two of them, connected in a way they had never expected. Their hearts beat in quiet harmony, each aware of the dangers and obstacles ahead, but also of the strength they drew from each other. The days continued, filled with work, small talks, and the quiet tension of unspoken feelings. Ethan and Clara found solace in each other's presence, comfort in the simple acts of care and attention, and the beginnings of a bond that neither could ignore. They were learning that love could be patient, cautious, and careful, but still powerful enough to change the course of their lives. And so, the lines between friendship, gratitude, and something more began to blur. Both Ethan and Clara knew that their hearts were moving toward each other, but the outside world, with its expectations, judgments, and dangers, waited patiently to test the strength of what was growing between them. The weeks passed, and the bond between Ethan and Clara grew stronger. Their days were filled with hard work, laughter, and quiet moments that neither had ever experienced before. Ethan felt alive in a way he had not known since his youth. Clara, too, discovered a warmth and joy that had been missing from her life. But as their connection deepened, so did the shadows around them. Rumors began to spread in the nearby town. People whispered about Ethan and Clara, questioning why a man and a woman, unbound by family or marriage, were spending so much time together. Some criticized Clara for her closeness with Ethan, hinting at impropriety. Others questioned Ethan's intentions, assuming he was there to claim more than her gratitude. The small, tight-knit community of the plains had rules, unspoken, yet powerful, and outsiders were quick to judge when those rules were bent. Clara felt the weight of these rumors heavily. She had always been a woman of quiet strength, but the gossip stirred fear in her heart. Her family had expectations, and she could not ignore them forever. Yet, the thought of distancing herself from Ethan felt impossible. He had become a part of her life, someone she trusted deeply, someone who made her feel safe and seen. She knew that walking away would be painful, and the idea of doing so left her restless at night. Ethan, too, felt the pressure. He had survived storms, injuries, and loneliness, but he was unprepared for the judgment of others. He had hoped that their time together in Clara's cabin would remain private, a world separate from society's rules. Desk. Now, with whispers following them wherever they went, he realized that staying close to her would bring consequences neither of them could escape.
His pride urged him to leave, to protect her reputation and avoid conflict, but his heart refused.
One afternoon, while tending to the fields, Clara received a letter from her family. It was brief but firm, reminding her of her obligations and warning her to avoid scandal. Reading it, she felt a mixture of anger and sorrow. She wanted to respond, to assert her independence, but the words of caution weighed heavily on her. She looked at Ethan, who was repairing the fence nearby, and her heart ached. She did not want to hurt him, yet she could not ignore the demands of her family. Ethan noticed her distress immediately. "But Clara, what is it?" he asked, his voice gentle. She handed him the letter without speaking. She handed him the letter without speaking. Ethan read it carefully, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he looked up at her with a mixture of understanding and determination. "They cannot decide who your heart belongs to," he said firmly. "You do not owe anyone your happiness except yourself." She wanted to believe him, to trust that love could overcome expectation and fear, but the weight of tradition and family loyalty made her hesitant. Ethan reached out and held her hand, squeezing it gently. "Whatever happens, I will stand by you," he said. "I don't care what anyone else thinks. You are mine, and I am yours." Those words, spoken with quiet conviction, touched Clara deeply, yet fear lingered. Choosing love meant defying society, family, and convention. The cost was uncertain, and the consequences could be severe. But her heart knew the truth. She could not deny her feelings for Ethan, nor the bond they had formed. The tension escalated when the stranger from her past, the man to whom she had been promised, returned. This time he came with more than questions. He came with expectations, demanding that Clara honor her previous commitment. He spoke of duty, reputation, and the consequences of defiance. Clara felt trapped between two worlds, one of duty and obligation, the other of freedom and love. Ethan confronted him, standing tall and resolute. "Clara is no one's to command," he said firmly. "She chooses her own path. If you care for her, respect her choice. If not, leave her be." The stranger's expression hardened, but he eventually withdrew, leaving Clara and Ethan in a quiet, uneasy peace. Though the immediate threat had passed, the tension lingered. They both knew that love alone could not erase the rules of society, and that every choice came with risk. In the days that followed, Clara and Ethan focused on their work while navigating the complexities of their growing feelings. They shared moments of intimacy and trust, small gestures that spoke volumes, holding hands while walking through the fields, sharing meals in silence, and exchanging glances that conveyed emotions words could not capture. Their connection became a quiet rebellion, a private world where love could flourish despite the pressures surrounding them. But the outside world was relentless. Gossip continued to spread, and neighbors began to question Clara's presence with Ethan more openly. Some offered warnings, others expressed disapproval. Each encounter reminded them that their love existed in a delicate balance between desire and danger. They were forced to confront the reality that happiness could not be taken for granted. One night, a severe thunderstorm swept across the plains, much like the one that had brought them together. The wind howled, and rain lashed against the cabin. Ethan and Clara huddled together, listening to the storm rage outside. It was a moment of vulnerability and closeness, where fear and love intertwined. "I hate that. We have to hide," Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "I hate that our hearts are caught between what we want and what we should do."
Ethan pulled her close, holding her as if he could shield her from the world.
"Brace. We cannot control what others think, he said softly. All we can do is hold on to what we have, protect each other, and trust that our love is worth the fight. The world outside remained unchanged, with its rules and expectations, but inside the cabin there was a sense of peace, a recognition that they had each other, and that sometimes that was enough to face any challenge. Brask. Yet, even as they embraced, both Ethan and Clara knew that obstacles remained. Family expectations, societal judgment, and the ever-present danger of gossip would continue to test their bond. They had found love, but it was a love that demanded courage, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. The weeks turned into months, and their love continued to deepen. They learned to navigate the complexities of their emotions, balancing desire with caution, intimacy with discretion. Each day brought new challenges, yet also new moments of connection and understanding. Their love was no longer a secret between strangers. It was a bond forged in adversity, strengthened by trust, and defined by choice. One afternoon, while repairing a section of the fence together, Clara paused and looked at Ethan. Do you ever wonder what our life could be like if there were no rules, no expectations? She asked softly. Ethan smiled, a rare, genuine smile that lit up his face.
Every day, he admitted, but rules and expectations exist, whether we like them or not.
That's why what we have, what we're building, matters even more. It's ours because we choose it. Clara felt a surge of hope and determination. They had already faced so much: danger, fear, judgment, and yet their love endured. She realized that true love was not about ease or comfort. It was about choosing each other in spite of the challenges, standing together when the world sought to pull them apart. As the sun set over the plains, painting the sky with streaks of orange and gold, Ethan and Clara stood side by side watching the horizon. They knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be moments of doubt, fear, and separation. But they also knew that their love was real, profound, and worth fighting for. And so, in the quiet of the plains, with the wind whispering through the grass and the world watching from afar, Ethan and Clara made an unspoken promise to each other to stand together, to protect their bond, and to face whatever challenges came with courage and unwavering devotion. Their love, though tested by the outside world, was a force neither could ignore, a connection that would shape their lives in ways they could not yet imagine. Little did they know that the true test of their bond was yet to come. Forces beyond their control, from family expectations to unforeseen dangers, would soon demand that they confront their deepest fears and make choices that would determine not only their love but the very course of their lives. The next chapter of their journey would push them to the limits of heart and courage, forcing them to ask themselves what they were truly willing to fight for. And in that quiet, fleeting moment of peace, they held on to each other, knowing that whatever storms lay ahead, they would face them together, bound by trust, love, and the promise that neither would let the other fall again. Breaths. Time moved slowly on the plains, yet it seemed faster than Ethan and Clara expected. Their love had grown quietly hidden in the routines of the cabin, the work on the land, and the soft moments they shared together. But the outside world remained relentless. Rumors persisted, family pressures lingered, and their choices would soon demand a courage they had only begun to understand. One morning, Clara received word from her family. They were coming to see her, intent on ensuring she honored her promise to the man she had once been promised to. And she knew this visit would test her in ways she had never faced before. Fear and anxiety gripped her, but beneath it was determination. She would not let her heart be dictated by obligation. She would stand for love, even if it meant challenging the world. Ethan noticed her tension immediately. "Clara," he said gently, "whatever comes, I am with you."
"You are not alone." Clara smiled softly, grateful for his unwavering support.
His words gave her courage. But she knew that the visit would not be simple. Her family had rules and expectations, and breaking them would not be without consequences. Yet she also knew that she could not deny her feelings any longer. She could not walk away from the man who had saved her life, who had become her confidant, protector, and heart. The day of their visit arrived, and Clara's family appeared at the cabin's edge. Their expressions were serious, a mix of concern and authority. Ethan stood beside Clara, silent but firm, a quiet shield of protection. The family's questions began cautiously, about her work, her health, and then inevitably turned toward Ethan. "Why is he here?" they asked, their voices controlled but sharp. Clara took a deep breath. "He was injured. I helped him, Brett. And I have chosen to keep him in my life. Not because I must, but because I want to." A silence followed. Her family's eyes searched hers for doubt, for hesitation, for the possibility that she might change her mind. Desperate, Ethan remained quiet, letting Clara speak for herself. He understood that this moment was not only about their love, but about her courage, her independence, and her voice. Finally, her mother spoke, her tone softer than before. "Clara, you must understand. This is not simple. You have responsibilities, expectations. You cannot ignore them." Clara met her mother's gaze steadily. "I understand. I always have. But I also understand my heart, and my heart belongs with Ethan." Desperation. "I cannot deny what I feel. I will not betray it." The room was still. Her words were firm, filled with conviction. Her family could see that she had made her choice, that she had considered the consequences, and that nothing could sway her. Ethan, still standing beside her, reached for her hand, their fingers intertwined, a silent promise of unity. Over the following days, the family's resistance softened. They could not ignore the sincerity in Clara's eyes, nor the quiet strength in Ethan's demeanor. The decision was difficult, but ultimately, love prevailed over expectation. Clara's choice had been made, and those who truly cared for her began to accept it, slowly, reluctantly, but with eventual understanding. With the family's visit behind them, Ethan and Clara finally allowed themselves to breathe. The tension that had shadowed their days began to lift, replaced by a new kind of peace. They worked together on the land, laughed freely, and shared evenings by the fire without fear or hesitation. Their love, once tested by circumstance, had emerged stronger, more resilient, and unwavering. Yet, life on the plains still held challenges. One afternoon, a herd of cattle wandered dangerously close to a cliff edge. Ethan and Clara raced to guide them to safety, working side by side with a familiarity born of shared experience. Each movement, each command, each glance spoke volumes of the trust and understanding between them. In moments like these, love was not just words. It was action, presence, and unwavering support. After the cattle were safely returned, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was a canvas of fiery colors, reflecting the intensity and warmth that had grown between them. Ethan turned to Clara, his eyes soft but serious. "Clara, we face storms, threats, and judgment. But we made it through, and I want you to know I am yours, and I always will be." Clara's heart swelled. She reached for him, her hand resting on his cheek. Desperation. "Ethan, you are mine, and I am yours." "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." They embraced, a quiet and powerful connection that spoke of everything they had endured together. The fear, the courage, the trust, and the love that had blossomed in the midst of hardship. The plain stretched before them, vast and open, a reflection of the freedom they had fought for. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and Clara continued to build their life together. They repaired the cabin, worked the land, and nurtured the small herd of cattle with dedication and care.
Each day their bond deepened, not just in moments of love and tenderness, but in the shared effort of creating a life together.
Their relationship became a testament to patience, resilience, and the power of choosing love in the face of challenge. Evenings were filled with quiet conversations, laughter, and the simple joy of being together. They spoke of dreams, hopes, and the future, planning a life where they could face each day side by side. Every shared smile, every touch, every glance strengthened the foundation of their connection. They learned that love was not only passion, it was also patience, understanding, and the commitment to face life's hardships together. As the seasons changed, so did their lives. The harshness of winter tested them with cold winds and snowstorms, but it also brought them closer. They tended to the animals, repaired fences, and shared long nights by the fire, finding comfort in each other's presence. Spring brought new growth to the land, mirroring the growth of their love. Flowers bloomed, calves were born, and every day was a new reminder of the life they had chosen together. Narration. Throughout it all, Ethan and Clara never forgot the storm that had brought them together. They often spoke of it, quietly and reverently, knowing that without that moment of danger and courage, their paths might never have crossed. It became a story they would tell each other in the years to come, a reminder of how fragile life could be and how precious the bonds of love were when forged in trust and care. Their love story became one that others in the community could no longer ignore. Neighbors saw the devotion, the respect, and the partnership between them. Gradually, the whispers of judgment turned into admiration. People realized that Ethan and Clara's bond was genuine, strong, and built on more than fleeting attraction. It was a partnership of equals, a love that had been tested and proven resilient. One quiet evening, as they watched the stars emerge in the dark sky, Ethan turned to Clara with a soft smile. "We faced so much together, Clara," brace, "and yet, here we are, stronger than ever."
Clara rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart.
"We are stronger because we chose each other, and because we never gave up, even when the world tried to pull us apart." They sat in silence, the only sounds being the rustle of the wind through the grass and the distant call of an owl. In that quiet, shared peace, they understood that love was not always easy, but it was always worth fighting for. In time, Ethan and Clara became inseparable. They faced challenges together, celebrated victories together, and supported each other through hardships. Their love, once forbidden, had become a source of strength for both of them. They had proven that the heart's desires, when guided by trust, courage, and care, could overcome the barriers of expectation, fear, and judgment. First,
Years later, as they stood together on the porch of their cabin, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan took Clara's hand in his. "We've built something beautiful here," he said.
desperate. Not just a home, not just a life, but a love that can endure anything. Clara smiled, tears of happiness in her eyes. A storm that brought us together and taught us that sometimes the most unexpected events lead to the greatest blessings. They embraced, holding each other close as the colors of the sunset bathed the plains in gold and orange. In that moment there was no fear, no judgment, only the quiet certainty of love earned, chosen, and shared freely. Their story, "You are mine, I am yours," became more than a tale of romance. It became a testament to the power of courage, trust, and unwavering devotion. It was proof that love, when nurtured with care and protected with strength, could overcome any obstacle. And so, Ethan and Clara continued their lives together, side by side, hearts intertwined, ready to face whatever the future held. Their love remained a quiet force on the plains, strong and unyielding, a bond forged in hardship, tested by fear, and strengthened by choice. They had discovered the truth that some connections are too powerful to be denied, that true love requires courage, and that when two hearts find each other, nothing else can break the bond they share. Yet, after what had happened, he could no longer pretend he was entirely self-sufficient. Clara Hayes had shown him a side of life he had always avoided, the side where someone else's care could make a difference. Clara, meanwhile, continued her quiet work, tending to Ethan's recovery while managing her own chores. She lived simply, with her cabin surrounded by open fields and a small patch of garden. She had learned to live with patience and resourcefulness, and her days were filled with tasks that kept her busy, but she found herself thinking of Ethan more than she expected. He was different from anyone she had met, proud, silent, and sometimes brusque, but with a heart that revealed itself in small gestures. The way he noticed small details, like the first signs of rain or the tracks of a wild animal, showed her his mind was sharp, even if he rarely spoke of his feelings.
Ethan struggled with his own emotions.
He was grateful for Clara's care, of course, but gratitude was complicated by pride. He hated feeling dependent on anyone. He had survived storms, wild animals, and injuries before. Yet now he found himself unable to stand without her help. Each meal she prepared, each gentle word she spoke, chipped away at the walls he had built around his heart. But he did not know what to do with the strange warmth that began to grow inside him whenever she was near. As Ethan's strength returned, they began to spend more time together outside the cabin. Clara taught him how to check the soil for signs of rain, how to plant seeds so that they would grow even in harsh conditions, and how to notice the small movements of wildlife around the fields. Ethan listened more than he spoke at first, observing her gentle skill and practical wisdom. Slowly he began to share small pieces of his own knowledge, how to read the sky, how to guide a horse over rough terrain, and how to keep cattle calm during thunderstorms. Despite their growing bond, both Ethan and Clara were aware of boundaries they could not ignore. Clara had her own past to consider. She had been promised long ago to another man by her family's expectations.
While she had never truly accepted it, the commitment weighed on her like a shadow.
Ethan knew little of this, but he noticed the brief moments of hesitation in her eyes whenever the future came up in conversation. There was a line neither dared cross, yet the heart often ignored lines meant for the mind. Small incidents began to deepen their connection. One morning, while checking the fence on the far side of the property, Ethan slipped on a muddy hill. Clara, who had been walking a short distance behind him, caught him before he fell completely. Their hands touched briefly as she steadied him. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Neither spoke. Either moved. Ethan felt an unfamiliar rush of emotion, gratitude mixed with something deeper, a pull he could not name. Clara's heart raced as well. She felt a thrill of connection, but also a pang of fear, knowing the attraction she felt was dangerous for both of them. Days turned into weeks. They spent mornings working the land together, afternoons sharing quiet conversations by the fire, and evenings watching the sun set over the plains. Each day brought them closer, but with that closeness came tension. Ethan found himself longing for her presence, yet afraid to admit it. Clara found herself hoping he would notice her, yet fearful of the consequences. Their hearts moved toward each other even as their minds warned them to stay apart. One evening, after a long day of repairs to the fence and tending to the small herd, they sat on the cabin's porch sipping tea. The sky was painted with streaks of pink and gold, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. For a while, they simply sat in silence, letting the sounds of nature fill the space between them. Then Ethan spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "You've done more for me than anyone ever has," he said. I don't know how to repay you."
Clara shook her head, smiling softly. "You don't need to repay me."
"You're alive. That's enough." First, Ethan looked at her, searching her face for hidden meaning.
It's more than that,
He admitted. I don't know why, but I feel like I owe you something deeper. Something I've never felt before." Clara's eyes met his. She wanted to speak, to tell him she felt the same, but fear held her back. She knew how fragile their situation was, how easily things could go wrong if they gave in to their feelings too quickly. Yet, her heart betrayed her mind. "Ethan, some debts can't be measured in words or actions," she said carefully. "Some things are about trust and care, and being there for each other." Their hands brushed again, this time lingering just a little longer. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words. Both felt the pull of something neither could name, a connection that went beyond friendship or duty. And yet, the outside world remained a threat, a constant reminder that their bond was not meant to be so easily accepted. Then came the moment that tested everything. One afternoon, while Ethan was helping Clara repair a section of her fence, a stranger appeared at the edge of her property. He was a tall, imposing man, and his eyes fell immediately on Clara. Ethan recognized the tension in her posture. The stranger was the one she had been promised to, the man whose claim over her life had never truly been resolved. The stranger approached, speaking in measured, confident tones. He questioned why Ethan was there, why Clara had allowed him to stay, and what their relationship was. Ethan felt his blood boil, but he kept his temper in check. Breath. Clara stepped forward, standing tall despite her fear. "Ethan was injured," she said firmly. "I helped him. That is all." The stranger's gaze lingered on Ethan. "Helping him," he said slowly, his tone laced with suspicion. "And now he is part of your life?" Ethan met his eyes steadily, though his jaw was tight. "I was hurt." "She saved my life. I owe her nothing but gratitude." The stranger's eyes flicked to Clara, and she felt the weight of his expectations pressing down on her. She wanted to defend Ethan, to declare what she felt, but the fear of family obligations and social judgment made her hesitate. Ethan noticed her inner struggle, and it pained him to see her trapped between duty and desire. The stranger left, but the encounter left a shadow over the cabin. Ethan and Clara sat in silence afterward, both grappling with feelings they had not yet admitted to each other. They were aware now that their bond, while growing stronger, could not exist without risk. Yet neither could deny the pull they felt. In the days that followed, Ethan became more protective of Clara, helping her with her work, repairing fences, and keeping watch over the property. Clara noticed his attentiveness, feeling a warmth in her chest she could not ignore. Each smile he offered, each thoughtful gesture, deepened the connection between them. They shared quiet moments in the evenings, watching the sunset, talking about their pasts, and learning about each other in ways that went beyond words. Ethan began to realize something he had never admitted before. He was falling for Clara. It was frightening and exhilarating all at once. He had never let himself care for anyone so deeply, and the thought of losing her was unbearable. Clara, too, felt a growing affection for Ethan. She admired his strength, his resilience, and the quiet kindness that surfaced in small gestures. But she also feared what their feelings could mean: the judgment of others, the expectations of her family, and the unknown consequences of choosing love over duty.